The sun hung low over the hidden leaf village, casting long shadows across the training grounds where Naruto Uzumaki stood, his bright orange jumpsuit a stark contrast against the fading light. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he clenched his fists, his blue eyes sharp with determination. He had spent years honing his skills, mastering the Rasengan, and even taming the Nine Tails chakra, but today's challenge was unlike any he'd faced before. Across from him, the lifeless eyes of a dozen puppets gleamed ominously, their wooden limbs creaking as they twitched into motion. These weren't ordinary puppets, they were rogue, their strings severed by some unseen force, their once loyal programming twisted into betrayal. The puppets had once belonged to Suna's finest shinobi, their intricate designs and deadly mechanisms a testament to the skill of their creators. But now, they moved with a mind of their own, their jagged blades and hidden poison needles glinting as they lunged at Naruto. He barely had time to react before the first puppet slashed at his chest, its arm extending unnaturally. Naruto twisted midair, feeling the wind of the blade graze his shirt as he countered with a spinning kick, sending the puppet crashing into a tree. Splinters flew, but the puppet merely righted itself, its joints realigning with eerie precision. "What the heck is going on?" Naruto muttered, his mind racing. He had heard rumors of rogue puppets in the Land of Wind, but he hadn't expected them to appear so close to home. Worse yet, these things weren't just mindless drones, they fought with strategy, adapting to his movements as if they had been trained against him. One puppet spat a volley of senbon, forcing Naruto to leap back, his hands flashing through seals. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 3 identical Narutos materialized beside him, each charging forward to engage the puppets in close combat. The battle became a whirlwind of motion, wooden limbs clashed against fists, kunai sparked against reinforced joints, and the air hummed with the energy of Naruto's Rasengan as he drove it into the chest of one puppet, obliterating it in a burst of splinters. But for every puppet destroyed, another seemed to take its place, emerging from the shadows like ghosts of their former masters. Naruto gritted his teeth. He needed to find the source of their rebellion. Then, a voice cut through the chaos, a familiar, gravelly tone that sent a chill down his spine. "These puppets were once tools of shinobi," Sasuke Uchiha said, stepping into the clearing, his Sharingan already active, the crimson eyes tracking every movement. "But something has corrupted their chakra strings." Naruto grinned despite the situation. "Took you long enough to show up." Sasuke smirked, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "I was observing. These things don't just betray their masters, they absorb their techniques." As if to prove his point, one of the puppets suddenly reared back, its wooden mouth splitting open to unleash a stream of fire, a perfect imitation of a fire-style jutsu. Naruto's eyes widened as the flames roared toward him, but Sasuke was already in motion, his blade flashing as he sliced through the attack, dissipating it with a precise chakra-infused strike. The two former rivals stood side by side, their rivalry momentarily set aside for the greater threat. Naruto felt the Nine Tails chakra surge within him, his skin tingling as orange energy flickered around him. "All right, let's do this," he shouted, his voice taking on a deeper, more feral edge as he entered his tailed beast mode. Sasuke's Rinnegan gleamed as he activated his Susanoo, the spectral warrior forming around him in a burst of indigo flames. The puppets hesitated for the first time, their hollow eyes reflecting the overwhelming power before them. The final clash was a spectacle of destruction. Naruto's Rasen Shuriken carved through 3 puppets at once, their bodies disintegrating into dust, while Sasuke's Susanoo blade cleaved through the rest with surgical precision. Yet, even as the last puppet fell, Naruto knew this was only the beginning. Whoever, or whatever, had turned these puppets against their masters was still out there, and if they could corrupt Suna's weapons, they could do far worse. Panting, Naruto let his transformation fade, turning to Sasuke with a grim expression. "We need to find out who's behind this." Sasuke nodded, his gaze distant. "Agreed. And we'll need allies." The two shinobi stood amidst the wreckage, the weight of their discovery settling over them. The puppets' betrayal was just the first move in a much larger game, one that threatened not just their village, but the entire shinobi world. The air crackled with tension as Naruto Uzumaki stood amidst the wreckage of Konoha's training grounds, his cerulean eyes locked onto the lifeless puppets scattered around him. But these weren't ordinary puppets, they were once loyal guardians, now twisted into betrayers, their hollow eyes glowing with malevolent energy. Across from him, their master, the rogue puppeteer Kurotsuchi, smirked from the shadows, fingers twitching as chakra threads pulse like venomous serpents. "You're outmatched, Naruto," Kurotsuchi taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. "These puppets don't just obey, they think, they adapt, and they hunger for your downfall." Naruto wiped a streak of blood from his cheek, his grip tightening around a kunai. Yeah? Well, I've got a habit of proving people wrong. With a burst of speed, he lunged forward, his body a blur of orange and gold. The nearest puppet, a monstrous amalgamation of blades and jagged limbs, reacted instantly, its torso splitting open to reveal a volley of poison needles. Naruto twisted midair, flipping over the projectiles, but another puppet surged from his blind spot, its clawed hand slashing toward his ribs. At the last second, a shadow clone materialized, taking the blow and dispersing in a puff of smoke. Naruto used the distraction to drive his kunai into the puppet's core, shattering its chakra conduit. Kurotsuchi's grin faltered. Clever, he admitted, but my creations learn from their mistakes. The remaining puppets shifted, their movements becoming eerily synchronized. One darted low, aiming for Naruto's legs, while another soared overhead, raining down explosive tags. Naruto gritted his teeth, channeling Kurama's chakra until a golden cloak enveloped him. The explosions detonated harmlessly against the protective aura, but the force still sent him skidding backward. He could feel the Nine Tails' power surging through him, but he knew relying on it too heavily would drain him fast. He needed a better strategy. Across the battlefield, Sakura Haruno was locked in her own brutal dance with a pair of puppets designed to mimic her taijutsu. Every punch she threw was countered, every dodge anticipated. Damn it, she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. They're reading my movements. But then she noticed it, a slight delay in their reactions whenever she feinted. They learn, but they're not perfect. With a fierce cry, she feigned a right hook, then pivoted into a devastating roundhouse kick, shattering the first puppet's head. The second lunged, but she channeled chakra into her fist, pulverizing its torso with a single earth-shattering blow. Nearby, Sasuke Uchiha moved with lethal precision, his Sharingan dissecting every puppet's weakness. Predictable, he scoffed, weaving through a storm of kunai and wires. His blade flashed, severing chakra threads midair, but Kurotsuchi wasn't done. The puppeteer's hands danced, and the fallen puppets began to reassemble, their broken parts fusing into a towering monstrosity. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. TCH. Annoying. He formed a sequence of hand signs, and flames erupted from his lips, engulfing the abomination. Yet, even as it burned, the puppet's limbs twitched, refusing to die. Naruto, seeing his comrades holding their own, felt a surge of determination. All right, Kurotsuchi, he growled, his voice layered with Kurama's growl. Time to end this. He formed a Rasengan in his palm, the spinning sphere of chakra humming with power. But Kurotsuchi only laughed. Fool. My puppets are immune to your tricks. He yanked his threads, and the remaining puppets merged into a single, colossal warrior, its maw gaping with crackling energy. A beam of condensed chakra erupted from its mouth, carving a trench through the earth as Naruto barely dodged. The battle had reached its climax. Naruto's mind raced. They adapt, but they're still puppets, they need chakra to move. An idea sparked. He created a dozen shadow clones, each hurling kunai toward the beast. The puppet swatted them aside effortlessly, but Naruto wasn't aiming to hit it. The kunai trailed explosive tags, which detonated in a chain reaction, obscuring the battlefield in smoke. In that instant, Naruto surged forward, his Rasengan morphing into a massive wind-style, Rasen Shuriken. With a roar, he hurled it straight into the puppet's core. The impact was cataclysmic, the puppet's body disintegrated, its stolen chakra scattering like embers. Kurotsuchi staggered, his threads severed. No. Impossible, he spat. But before he could react, Sasuke was behind him, his blade at the puppeteer's throat. Game over, Sasuke said coldly. Sakura cracked her knuckles, her gaze fierce. You're done. Naruto, panting but triumphant, approached. You underestimated us, he said. We don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for everyone you've hurt. Kurotsuchi's defiance crumbled, his puppets now nothing but lifeless husks. The battle was won, but the cost was clear. As the dust settled, Naruto felt the weight of their victory, and the unspoken truth that greater challenges loomed ahead. The air crackled with tension as Naruto stood amidst the wreckage of the battlefield, his breath ragged, his orange jacket torn and singed from countless clashes. The puppets, once loyal but now twisted by betrayal, circled him like vultures, their hollow eyes gleaming with eerie malice. Their former masters, the Suna shinobi, lay unconscious or worse, victims of their own creation's revolt. Naruto gritted his teeth, his fingers tightening around a kunai. This ends now, he muttered, his voice a low growl. The lead puppet, a monstrous amalgamation of blades and chakra strings, lunged first, its movements a blur of deadly precision. Naruto barely dodged, feeling the wind of its strike graze his cheek. He countered with a Rasengan, the spiraling energy shredding through the puppet's arm, but it didn't flinch. Instead, it regenerated instantly, its broken parts stitching back together with eerie, organic fluidity. Naruto's eyes widened. They're adapting? From the shadows, Kankuro emerged, panting, his face smeared with dirt and blood. They're using our own techniques against us, he rasped, his voice strained. They've learned. Evolved. His fingers twitched, as if instinctively reaching for his own puppets, but they lay shattered at his feet. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Naruto shot him a glance, seeing the despair in his eyes. We can't give up, Naruto shouted. There's gotta be a weakness. The puppets attacked in unison, their movements synchronized like a deadly dance. Naruto weaved through the onslaught, his reflexes pushed to the limit, but a razor-sharp limb grazed his side, drawing blood. He hissed, stumbling back, his vision swimming. The pain was sharp, but the frustration burned hotter. These weren't just mindless machines, they were fueled by something darker, something almost human. Then it hit him. Their emotions, Naruto gasped. They're not just rebelling, they're angry. Kankuro's eyes flickered with realization. The chakra. It's tainted. They're feeding off hatred. Naruto clenched his fists, feeling the familiar warmth of Kurama's chakra stirring within him. If hatred was their fuel, then he'd drown them in something stronger. With a roar, Naruto unleashed his nine-tails cloak, golden energy erupting around him like a wildfire. The puppets hesitated, for the first time, uncertainty flickered in their hollow eyes. Naruto charged, his movements a blur of light and fury. He smashed through their ranks, each strike infused not with rage, but with unwavering resolve. You don't have to be slaves to your anger, he shouted, his voice echoing across the battlefield. One by one, the puppets faltered. Their movements grew sluggish, their attacks less precise. The lead puppet let out a screech, its form writhing as if torn between obedience and defiance. Naruto saw his chance. He formed a massive Rasen Shuriken, the energy humming in his palm. This is for everyone you've hurt. With a final, desperate lunge, he hurled it straight into the puppet's core. The explosion was blinding. Light swallowed the battlefield, and for a moment, silence reigned. When the dust cleared, the puppets lay motionless, their strings severed, their malice extinguished. Kankuro staggered forward, his breath shaky. It's over? Naruto collapsed to one knee, his body spent, but his spirit unbroken. Yeah, he panted. They just needed someone to understand. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The Suna shinobi stirred, their eyes fluttering open as if waking from a nightmare. Among them, a young puppeteer, barely more than a child, clutched the remains of her first creation, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted this, she whispered. Naruto approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then make something better, he said softly. Something that doesn't have to hate to exist. The aftermath was quiet but profound. Suna's puppeteers, once proud and secretive, now gathered in solemn unity, vowing to rebuild, not just their weapons, but their bonds. Kankuro watched them, his usual arrogance replaced by something quieter, something like respect. You really don't give up, do you? He said to Naruto. Naruto grinned, wiping blood from his lip. Nope. That's my ninja way. As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the sand, the village began to heal. The puppets were gone, but the lesson remained, even the most broken things could find peace. And for Naruto, that was victory enough. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, the world had changed. Not just because the battle was won, but because the people who fought it had grown. And that, Naruto knew, was what truly mattered.